Hi, I'm Alicia Michelle, and as a trained and certified Christian mindset coach, I've helped hundreds of Christian women discover brain science-based mindset tools to help them grow closer to God and break free from anxiety, perfectionism, people-pleasing, and feeling like they're never enough. The Christian Mindset Coach is the award-winning podcast that shows you how to use simple brain science principles and biblical truth to renew your mind for lasting confidence, joy, and peace. I'm so glad you're here. Grab a cozy spot and let's get started. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Christian Mindset Coach with me, Alicia Michelle. Have you been praying and you still have no answers? Have you been pouring out your heart for so many years? Have you been hoping that things would have been changed by now? Have you cried all the faith you have through so many tears? He is moving with a love so deep. Hallelujah for the victory. Good things are coming, even when we can't see. We can't see it yet, but we believe that maybe we just haven't seen it. We just haven't seen it yet. If you are thinking, why does that sound so familiar? That is a very well-known song by Danny Gokey called Haven't Seen It Yet. And I was listening to that song, it quote, randomly, because I don't think there's any random things in life, but it randomly came on the radio a few days before I did this next interview that I'll be sharing today. And I thought, that's a song that I need to share as part of this episode. If we were in a stadium with tens of thousands of people, I can guarantee you that every person in that stadium would raise their hand and say that they have either been in a season where they had to wait for God to move, or they are in a season where they're waiting and trusting for God to move in the life of someone else. We live in this time of now and not yet. And we have to find ways to keep the faith when what we long for, that transformation, whether that's in someone else or in a job situation we're in with a child that we're trying to raise, whatever that is, we need to find a way to keep the faith through those challenging times of just when and how, God. Today, I'm sharing an incredible story that is very personal to me. It is the story of my precious sister, Kris. She's the only sister I have, and she and I grew up not liking each other very much. We've always been pretty different. And I always felt from a young age that we were at odds, and I know she would feel the same way. And after I became a Christian at age 19, I began praying for my sister to know Jesus. And I prayed, and I had other people pray, and I kept praying. I prayed he would bring healing in her life as I saw her make choices for many years that seemed self-destructive. I prayed for a renewal in our friendship and sisterhood because I wanted that sort of companionship. Again, she's my only sister. And I prayed for her salvation, and that salvation would come to her entire family because I knew of the freedom that was in Christ. And I so desperately wanted her to be able to experience that. Well, about 2 weeks ago, my sister and I were talking about this interview that I was planning to do with Ian Cron, the Enneagram expert and the guy who wrote this book about addiction and the 12 steps. You can listen to that in the previous episode. And she said, well, I have my story and I'm ready to tell it. And I thought, as the older sister, I don't want to force you into anything. So I was just like, okay, that would be great. And I didn't want to bring it up again because I didn't want her to feel weird. But then a few days later, she said, I'm ready, Alicia, I want to tell my story. And I realized how encouraging it would be to hear this absolute miracle that has happened in our family and specifically in her life. So I'm not going to say anything else because I don't want to steal any of her thunder, but this is a conversation with my dear sister, Kris. And more than anything, my prayer is that you will walk away encouraged if you are in a situation of waiting on the Lord for him to bring change in a situation or in a loved one's life. Okay, Kris. So I'm going to start our conversation off by introducing you to the listeners with what I wrote about you in the book. So I wrote about you in two spots. As you know,
Okay.
it's in the very last chapter.
It says, and this is about like how to apply ADD to everyday life and basically help yourself be more emotionally balanced. I said, I'm also learning how to laugh more and not take everything so seriously. And I have my sister, Kris, to thank for that. She is one of the funniest people I know and can make me pee in my pants laugh like no one else.
You're welcome.
It's so true, right? And then the other part was I said in the acknowledgments, I'm so grateful for my sister Kris and her family. Jesus, thank you for healing our relationship. Kris, I look at you and I am in awe of all that you've conquered. Gosh, I'm already starting to cry. And of what a gift you are to this world. And yes, you are the funniest person I know. And she truly is.
Thank you.
She cracks me up. And, you know, when we were like 3 and 6 or however far apart we were younger, it was really annoying that you were always the funny one and the cute one. But now it's awesome. So I love you and I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I love you too, and I'm glad that I'm here. And I was annoying and funny and cute. I don't know.
Well, it's so
Funny and cute.
annoying because I was so serious, but you were annoying to me because you weren't serious. You were just funny. And that's just who you are, who God made you to be. So, and that is just the ability that we can even talk about that is evidence of what God has done.
Right.
You're here to tell your story about just what has been happening in your life in the last few years. So let's kind of start at the beginning. What was life like for you before all of these changes started happening?
Well, the beginning, I mean, I feel like I have lived so many lifetimes in my 40 plus years.
She's saying that because I just turned 50 and
Yeah,
it's rubbing in, you know, that I'm older.
years.
Yeah.
Always. In the beginning, it was funny, but I think I learned that, use that as like a coping mechanism for everything. And I never felt comfortable in my own skin. I always felt like something was off or I was missing something. And I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol when I was like 13, and that flew into like a full blown addiction at 16.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've done a stint in rehab and I've been in trouble with the law and got a DUI and all that fun stuff. And, I was able to stop the drugs, but I mean, alcohol was something that was always persistent in my life. And with every pregnancy, I mean, I have 3 kids. With every pregnancy, I was able to get clean and sober and feel great and live my life. And why I picked up again after every time, I mean, that's a great question. I have no idea. But I think that 2020 COVID was a huge trigger for me. I mean, I was already working, I was bartending, and that was being in that scene. It just kept me sick, I want to say. But yeah, COVID, once that hit, it was like, well, I don't have to go to work. I can just drink every day and, do nothing and have a great time. And there's just so many things that after that is God. Like he was put into my life. We moved to Arizona. I don't think I would have gotten sober if I would have stayed in California. I just don't. And just putting me here, having, certain friends that are here now and starting to go to our church. And it's funny because I started going to church like when we first moved here, but I was still drinking and I never really knew what it was to have that relationship with God. I would go to church and I would check the boxes and then be drunk by 4 p.m. Yeah. So that was okay, cool. I went to church, I'm good. And I think having Willa go with me and starting her so young, I mean, she really thrived in it and always had a heart for Jesus and would look at me. And I felt like she was looking at me like, come on, Mom. I don't know. Your daughter.
I know.
Definitely.
We'll talk about this. Yes.
Definitely my youngest is much more like my sister here.
And my only daughter is a lot like you in looks and in personality. So it's just
People
funny.
get them switched all the time.
Yeah,
like,
when we get together, like, yeah, no, that's my kid. Don't really, no, it is.
Right. Even acts wise. Yeah. So, I mean, that was the start of it all. And just, there was so much in my life that was, let me think of those last weeks before I got sober. Like, it was just a mess. Spiritually, I was a mess. Mentally, I was a mess. Financially, I was a mess. I was trying to control this and control that. And ego plays a huge part in that
Right.
because I can do it. I don't need help. That
Right.
was weakness. That was a big part of that was asking for help was weakness. Always. I've always felt like that. Crying, showing emotions is weakness. Being funny is the way to go. So,
Well, it's interesting though that you have used humor as a way to kind of slough off some of that and still be okay. And everyone thinks if you're funny, then you're okay.
right.
But of course,
You're
we know
good.
that so many comedians struggle with all these
Yeah.
addictions too, because they're trying to cover up for, with funny. That's just their way
Right.
of coping.
Right. And I
Yeah.
can relate to so many of those people. But
Well,
yes,
I was going to say,
go
there was
ahead.
that point. It was in the late summer of 2022 that
Mm,
you and I took a trip. We
mhm.
went down the Oregon coast, and it was, as adults, like, you never get to take those kind of trips by yourselves. I mean, it's usually, even
Right.
if you do have the privilege of traveling with other members of your extended family, like, it's usually with their kids and their husbands. But it was a trip that I took with my sister-in-law part of the way, and then I took with you the other part of the way. And it was not long after that you told me that you had been struggling with alcohol and you wanted to get sober, or you had gotten sober. And so I know we had had some pretty interesting conversations on that trip. How did that kind of play into the role of this whole recovery journey for you?
Well, I mean, I think on that trip, I mean, I was drinking, but not as much as I normally would on a day to day, which helped me to connect, I think, with you on a different level that we had never really connected before.
Yeah.
Like I always had this guard up,
Yeah.
not just with you, but pretty much with everybody. And I felt it. I felt, that I was ready for a change. I was ready to just do something different. And I think about that place that we went. I don't remember what it was called, where the ocean was, and it was so beautiful. And we just
Yes.
sat there on that sea
Mendocino.
cliff.
It was
Yeah.
Mendocino. I know. Like, we were both in tears at just the
You
magic.
were. And
We're
it
both.
was so hot. No, and I remember I was like,
You're like, I wasn't feeling my emotions then. So
I really wasn't. And I remember looking at you like, wow, I really wish I could just like be there and get that. Because I remember I asked you, I was like, why are you crying? Like,
I know. And you're like, what? Crying weirdo? Like,
and you just told me, you're like, I just feel the presence of God and I'm just not going to hold it back anymore. And, I'm not ashamed of that. I remember thinking like, wow, I wish I could feel that. I wish I could feel that, you know, and it really is. I mean, I definitely feel at the beach. That's my place,
yeah.
closest to God. Like that's
Right.
definitely where I can feel like I could really connect. And that was, kind of a place where I got home and like I wanted to start making some changes. Took me a couple months, but you know,
Big changes. It takes time to do that. It takes time to do that in a meaningful way. Like, we can just kind of say, oh, I'm going to fix this about myself. But these were not little changes that you were making. I mean, this was a radical reforming, not just of your habits, but of why you were doing it, of something that you had been battling literally your whole life. Like, you. So this was, I mean, there's nothing wrong with understanding what you're doing and being solid in that. I think that's what you did.
yeah.
Yes. Well, as part of that, as part of that journey, and I think it started on that trip. I mean, even before then, our relationship was changing. We'd always kind of had, just like you said, the guard up between us, like, just felt very different. You looked at the world through a certain way, and I looked at the world a different way. And I just, even before you got sober, I saw him shifting some of that and bringing closeness in so that we even had the idea of doing something like a trip together like that. So, how did that kind of evolution of our journey, of our relationship, help you maybe be more free to look at some of these deeper things going on inside?
No, I don't know. Like I started to feel a closeness with you that I had never felt before. And I just wanted to be I don't know. I just wanted to have those relationships and not have these resentments and insecurities, because that was a big part of my whole life too, was holding on to anger and holding on to resentment and not being able to let a lot of that go. And that's all part of the healing process too, I think, I'm sorry, what was the question?
No, I think you answered it. I think part of the problem when we have tension in relationships is it's really easy to just point fingers and to say they are like this and
Correct.
even they're like this and we're different. But to see that some of the reasons why there's distance is because there's anger, there is resentment, there's misunderstanding on both sides. And I just know that in that time, as I started to see some of that for myself, of my side of that, and just like praying for you in a different way, I began to see that coming down. And I began to see that we could laugh together and we could be real together and didn't feel like we had
Right.
to put on a front. And so, yeah, I just think that's part of the journey. But I know obviously Christ was the impetus and the core of a lot of this. So, can you walk us through what that was like to this time in your recovery have Christ as the center? And like you said, it wasn't just checking a box for you to try to even
Right.
go to church or know. Because I remember you and I having conversations that was like, we would talk about praying, like letting things go and just praying for certain, like letting worries go. And you're like, I pray every day. I remember you saying that. And I thought, you're praying, but there's not that relationship with God. So, yeah, what was that like to go through that with recovery with Christ?
I mean, I had to fully surrender. I mean, I had to literally get on my knees and surrender. And I remember, like the last night that I drank was nothing special or exciting. I drank
What day
myself to
was that,
sleep.
by the way? What day was that?
October 16th, 2022.
2022.
Yes. So it'll be 3 years this October.
Oh my gosh.
But it was just another one of those, I would drink myself to a passing out point, you know, and it was not it was not fun anymore. And it was becoming to where even my husband, who, my husband, it just doesn't, he was even to the point where he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was hiding it from him. I was hiding it from everybody. I mean, I would hide bottles and trash cans and, you know, beer cans all over the place. And he was even like, looking in the trash, like, "Who drank? You drank all of this? Like, what's going on here?" And it was to the point where I was just so not present for my kids. It was becoming a functioning thing. I had to drink to get up in the morning.
Mm.
I had to drink at baseball games in my cup, just to stay leveled out through the day. And then I could come home and be like, okay, now I can just like drink freely and whatever, and just missing out on so much stuff. And I was getting to that point. I was feeling it like, I don't want to live this way anymore. And it was Saturday at night. I woke up Sunday. I was supposed to go to church with my friend Erin. I didn't. I overslept. And I just sat there feeling totally crappy. And my husband came in and talked to me, and he was like, do you want to go to a meeting? And just when he said that, like something clicked in my head. And I'm like, yeah, I think I do.
Wow.
I think I need help. And I didn't go right away. And it's a very scary feeling. It's a very scary feeling to give that up and surrender and be like, I need help. I think I have a problem. So I had been sober for like 5 days, 4 or 5 days. I hadn't gone to a meeting or anything yet. I was planning on it, of course. And then again, I was sitting in my room and there's so much emotion. There's so much, and you feel like crap after quitting drinking. You're sweaty and just a mess and sick feeling and nauseous. And I just, like I said, I literally got on my knees and I prayed and I was like, okay, God, okay, I'm done. I'm done. Like, I'm surrendering to you. I give you everything. And I'm getting chills right now as I'm talking about it. I will do whatever you need me to do. I need you in my life. And I need to do this. And all I can say is it just felt like after I prayed, it just felt like a warm hug.
Yeah.
And that, okay, get through another day and I can do this. And I think I went to church later that week and I'm a mess. The whole time I'm a mess. I'm crying, I'm emotional and going through all of this. And the days I went into church that week and, our pastor always closes his sermons with, if anybody wants to give their life to Christ, do it now. Like, pray this prayer. And I just sat there and I prayed that prayer, Jesus, I need you. I need you to come into my life and be my Lord and Savior. And I can't say, I just, again, I'm a mess crying, and from that point on, I stayed sober. I started going to meetings. I got a sponsor. I started working the 12 steps and really just leaning on God and working towards that relation. And I still feel new in my faith.
Yeah.
Because I don't know anything. Like there's people that can like quote scripture off the back of their, and I'm like,
we didn't grow up doing any of that.
right.
Like, it's interesting to have kids now who have been a part of church and grown up in church because they know some of the songs and the things that we just didn't grow up learning. So
Right.
I remember that stage too for me, just starting over fresh.
Right. And it really is like a new life, a new beginning. And it's not, rainbows and butterflies and, everything right away, but it's working through everything. And like I said, accepting and prayer and surrendering everything.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things with the 12 steps. Like, it's definitely, they say your higher power. Well, that's my higher power, but I don't know. I had a good experience with the 12 steps. I don't know if you want to go into that, but
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you about that. So on the episode previous to this one, you guys listening know we talked to Ian Cron, who wrote about the Enneagram, is very famous for that, but he just wrote a book called The Fix, which talks about the 12 steps and how they are really applicable to us and our journey and how all of us have a form of addiction. And so, yeah, I wanted to get your take on that. But even before that, I was thinking about something that he said in that interview when he said that there is this place you get to in your addiction where for a while it just feels like it's this coping thing that nobody knows about and you're fine with it. And you're like, whatever, it's no big deal. Who cares? Drinking or whatever it is. And then it starts slowly, like the tide, like creeping up in your life just a little at a time to all of a sudden you're like, this thing is controlling my life. It's completely, I'm not even able to do what I want to do. It's telling me what to do now. And that sounds like a lot what you were experiencing when you went.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely progressive. It's something like you said, like it's just a good time. I just like to have a few beers. And then suddenly it's like, you can't live without it. And it's so gross. It's totally takes control over you. I mean, you can't even function without it. At least for me, that's what it was. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm functioning, I'm still going to work. I'm still, getting up and taking care of my kids and whatever, but you're not present. You're not there. You're not, who you're supposed to be. And
it's like you have that feeling that this is not what you want. I remember on our trip, and of course we have the term special drinks, you and I know what that means. Okay,
special drink.
Sorry, but so like years before, or just even when we started hanging out more, we would go to the beach. Like if my sister and I came in town and we would tell the kids, I would say, because we don't keep like soda and stuff in the house, I would say, hey, we're going to stop at the store and we're going to get a special drink. And so, of course, Kris, being funny, was like, ooh, that's a special drink. So on our trip, I just remember we every night had to stop and get special drinks because it became an alcohol thing.
Right.
And I just remember one of the last nights of our trip, I mean, you saying, like, we were finishing up whatever fun tour thing we were doing for the night. And then there was this, like you said, we need to stop and get my special drinks. And there was just this, like,
we need to, yeah.
There was just this sadness about it.
Oh,
when you said it. And I'm not at all, like, trying to, like, shame you or anything, but I
No, I know.
that, and I thought, ooh, that special drink is taking control, right? Like, that ain't so special anymore.
And you did, because you're such an enabler. No.
okay, let me drive you to the liquor store.
Get
No,
my
but
drink.
I was just, I mean, at that point, I'm like, I'm not your parent and I don't live in the same state as you even, right? And
Mhm.
so I'm not here to judge you and to tell you, well, that's inappropriate or whatever. I'm just here to be
Right.
like, if you need it, it's your decision. You're an adult. Well, sure, let's stop. Let's go. So,
Right.
I hope that didn't come off in the wrong way. That was not
I
my goal. Was
didn't.
just like, I'm just here. But I just remember one of the last nights when we were there, and I thought, interesting. Okay, because not that you sensed it, that you
Right.
right?
Right.
This was more than just, a fun time every once in a while. So,
No,
yeah.
because it was a need, like, I needed it,
Yeah.
and I held back, like, on that trip, I was like, "I'm not gonna," and I actually did have a few little bottles stashed in my suitcase, and it's funny because I busted out that suitcase for something recently, and Willa, my daughter, was gonna use it, and she was like, "What is this?" And pulled out there was 2 tequila, like, shot bottles in there.
Okay, cool. I
I
know that your thing was always Bud Light. So I'm
Yeah, oh,
surprised.
yeah.
I'm thinking like, how could
Me and
where'd
Bud
you use
Light,
Bud
we go
Light?
way back.
Yeah, right? No, but
Oh,
like what? So it was tequila, like it's just
oh,
hard
yeah,
alcohol.
and
Like,
I
yeah.
started to get, like, it would start with, like, 2 shots and 6 beers. Okay, that was my
Yeah.
nightly, and
Yeah.
then it was, like, I would buy a full bottle, and then it was, like, I'm gonna take, like, 4 shots and drink a 12-pack, or maybe, like, 10 beers, and then I would have
Wow.
2 left over, and then always the next day, I'm like, "Okay." But, I mean, I was finishing bottles, like, but I would call it a kicker. Like,
Mm,
that was the kicker part, like, I would, to get me started off, and it's not funny, but that was,
mm.
like, how I
Yeah.
had to, be sneaky with everything, and it, like you said, it was controlling my life,
Yeah.
and to the point where my husband didn't even know, you know?
Mm, yeah.
So
Well, I have said this and I will say it again. I am just so grateful for you and your transparency about this. And I know it takes a lot of bravery to share even things like that. Like, I didn't even know that about that suitcase that you had stuff in there.
Right.
And I was in the room with you. So I don't even know when you did it. Like, when I go to the bathroom, would you just like pull it out and take a shot? Like, how did that?
Well, I would just, you know, when I was gonna take a shower, I would bring
Take
my
it in
stuff
there
in
with you.
there,
Okay.
you
Yeah.
know?
That makes sense. Okay. All right.
So
Well, let's go back. Think back to that person. You have come a long way and you've done so many great things, and God has done so much in you. That's really the ultimate thing here, is just what only Christ has done.
mm,
So, what encouragement or words would you say to that person back there who was kind of in the thick of it all? What would you give her?
for myself,
Yeah.
I would tell her to keep hanging on, not give up, and don't listen to the enemy, and, that you are so much more than worth so much more, because that's the thing, a big part of it is you feel unworthy. You feel unworthy of God's love. You feel ashamed of, I've sinned so many times, like he's done
Yeah.
with me,
Yeah.
that I was worthy of that. And just, I don't know, to try to stay in faith. And then it's timing. And that's what a lot of that is. It's all timing. It's all God's timing. And I go back sometimes and I think, gosh, I wish I would have done this years ago. I wish I would have, but I think it's his timing. It's his plan. None of this would have happened. Certain things would have, I don't know,
Yeah.
gone this way.
Well, on that, like, perfectly goes to the last question I was going to ask you. Is this episode is about having that confidence and hope when you're that person. We all have people or situations that feel hopeless or sad, or we've asked God for help with, like, so many times. And I mean, I know you don't need to go in it, but I know you have those in your life. I have those in my life too. But what would you say to someone who is praying for a loved one to change, for a loved one to come to terms with their addiction, or to heal a relationship that you've been praying for forever, and they're hopeless, they're tired? What encouragement would you give in that?
I would say don't stop. Don't stop praying. I mean, the power of prayer is so I mean, it's so huge, and prayer is meaningful, and it's so hard, and especially this day and age when we're like, okay, everything's now, and I'm waiting,
Yeah.
and why hasn't this happened yet?
Right.
And we want to see those immediate results, but it's still powerful, and that's our way to connect and our way to give it to God and surrender to God and to trust that this is out of my control. Okay, I'm trusting you that you will do this within your timing. And
Yeah. Yeah. Like our job is to show up and to keep praying and to keep believing and to watch our mind and how we're sitting in that place. I feel like,
Right.
like it's easy to go to despair. It's understandable to go to despair and depression and frustration. And yet we can feel those things, see them, but then with God's help, release it again and again and say, God, doing my part. I'm trusting
Right.
you and you're faithful and you're trustworthy. And that's where I'm going to live. That's where I'm keeping my emotions right now, is in that place.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's all you can do, and just try to find peace and strength through that. And I know it's so hard, but definitely accepting that and surrendering is so big.
Yes.
It's a big part of that. What are you going to say?
I was just going to say, so I wanted to close with 3 questions. So,
I can't wait.
and my sister, the amazing person that she is, she's like, because as I shared in the intro, like this was something that, I was sharing with her about the interview I did with Ian, and she was like, I want to tell my story. And I didn't want to like force you at all, but you had,
Force. There's that word.
I know we talk about that. That's the F word. Yes. That's because we have teens. But anyway, she just in her funny way, she said, we were talking about questions for this interview. And I said, I promised you 3 questions, because you said, yeah, I was hoping for
8.
I sent her 8, and she's like, yeah, this is her literal text. Yeah, I was hoping more for number 1, your name. Number 2, why I'm so funny. Number 3, why we are sisters.
Why we are sisters.
So, all right. So I'm asking you to answer that to close us up. Don't share your full name, but what is your name? That's the first question you wanted me to ask you.
My name is Christina, but everybody calls me Kris.
Yes. Okay. Why are you so
Okay.
funny?
I'm just hilarious. And you know what's funny is that that was my big thing when I stopped drinking. I was like, more.
No, I remember that. You were like, what if I'm not funny anymore? I'm like, what if I'm still be funny? I
And
remember that was a big fear of
I'm
you.
funnier now. Like,
You are
you
funny.
know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I definitely still have to laugh and find humor in everything, because I'll just die. It has to be, it has to be funny. And like I always say, that a day without laughter is a day wasted. That's not my quote, but
Yeah. No, but you send me, she's always sending me these videos on Instagram. Like, we have funny inside jokes on certain
dorky videos.
There's like just funny, weird, like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Just random things that only she and I know. And I'm just like, thank you, Kris.
So many inside jokes.
So many inside jokes. Yes.
And why are we sisters?
Why are we sisters?
I really don't want to get into the nitty gritty of
But already. Yeah.
Yeah. Our parents got together one night, one gross night.
Years ago, and 48 years ago, or however old. 47.
Well, I was going to say, not even 47 yet, almost.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Do
Kris,
it.
again, I love you so much.
I love you too.
I'm
And
so
if
proud
you
of
know, I'm so grateful for the relationship that God has restored in us. And you know what? You were one of the first people I made amends to.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that was huge. And I was even talking to one of my girls from my group meeting last night at church. I told her, I said, my sister's one of my best friends now. I said, I wouldn't have said that, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I said, she still gets on my nerves and she's still super pushy. I'm just kidding. I said, but
No, it's seriously like, I remember in the backyard you saying you wanted to talk to me, and I thought, oh gosh, what is this about? Oh no. But then I just was floored, because that kind of stuff doesn't happen where people say, and I know it was part of the 12 steps journey for you, or where you say, I was wrong. I hurt you. I'm sorry. And not like expecting, okay, now you apologize to me, right? Like,
Yeah, right.
it was just, and I was like, unexpected. I didn't feel like it was necessary. I know it was necessary for you, but I didn't need that because I was
Right.
already feeling like I was good with stuff that had happened with us. But to me, it just spoke volumes about the work that God had been doing. And I was just so proud of you.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for sharing your story today. All the bravery it takes. And always
Thank you
praying
for letting me. And thank you for allowing me on your show finally.
Yeah, I know.
After all these years.
Friend, I hope that was a blessing to you. I hope you laughed a little bit because, as I shared, my sister and I have learned how to laugh, and she's taught me a lot about how to laugh. But a few things I want you to consider as you think about her story. First, God was present even when things seemed hopeless on the outside. God was working. And like she shared, the timing of things had to be right. She wasn't ready to fully let go of alcohol and to change her life until she hit that place of seeing the addiction completely take over her life. And that had to manifest, it had to grow to that point. So God had to allow her to get to that place. But he was present, even when it looked like on the outside that nothing was changing. And second, there was a battle going on for her. And we can have empathy for our loved ones when they are in the midst of the battle. I think it's easy to think, why can't they just get it? Why can't they just change? What's so confusing about this? We can quote, see it clearly from our perspective. Like we think it's an easy answer, but there's a lot happening. And we've all been in places where we have to make these big decision moments. So we can have some empathy and space for people to have their transformation. And I think that starts with having a trust that God is in control. He has not forgotten, and that his promises are true when he says, come to me, give me your burdens, and I'm going to go into action. The third thing is that God doesn't resolve every situation with a nice bow. And sometimes we don't understand the why. As she was alluding to, it's not like her life is perfect. And we still have things in our family that we're trusting God with. And our job is to keep trusting, to keep knocking, to keep asking. That's our job. God's job is to move at his pace and in his way. And we can trust him with that. But we can't expect it to all be resolved with a nice bow. We can look and wait for the miracle. And that's our job, is to keep our mind in that place. And then last, this aspect of God will surprise you and shock you. I remember that phone call I got at the end of October in 2022 from my sister when she said, I am an alcoholic and I have started going to AA. I remember being like, wait, what? Like, we had just gone on that trip a few months before. And I had shared, I remembered seeing how the addiction had built to this point. I always saw her drinking. It wasn't that I had never seen her drink before, but I saw the sadness in her eyes when she said, I need to stop and get my special drinks, And I couldn't believe it that after all this time of praying and trusting, it was a moment for me to say, God, you're so faithful. You're so good. And it is one of the most joyous experiences for me now when I get to go travel to be where she lives in Arizona to go to church with her. It is just one of my favorite things in the world to be able to stand there beside my sister, raise my hands to Jesus and praise him, and to see her doing the same. There's nothing better. I had the opportunity and the massive blessing to go and watch her be baptized. That was just an incredible experience. So this episode is sharing her miraculous story and giving you encouragement and hope if you're in that in-between season, that God is at work, that we need to stay faithful and stay consistent and to keep asking and knocking and to keep watch on our mindset of getting aware when we notice discouragement and despair coming in, because those are not things that God is going to use. I mean, it's not going to help us. We think it's helping us, but it's not serving us. It's certainly not serving the situation. Being real that it's discouraging, being real that we're frustrated, but asking God for help to release those emotions so that we can stay in that place of waiting in the maybe you just haven't seen it yet, as the Danny Goki song says. Friend, I would love to hear either where you're waiting, the place where you're waiting in and trusting God for. I would love to pray for you about that. Or I would love to hear the miraculous story that God has done in your family as you waited and trusted. Maybe it's your story. Maybe it's the story of your child or your husband. God is at work, and we can encourage each other in this way. So reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook. Instagram is at Alicia Michelle Coach, and it's just ALICIA MICHELLE, and then Coach. I would love to connect with you. And again, I read every comment that comes up in my DMs or on social. I would love to connect with you there. All right, friend, take care. Talk to you next week for our next episode. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining me today for the Christian Mindset Coach. If you loved today's show, would you take 2 seconds and share a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts? I've got a special gift for you when you share a review, my amazing 50 I Am declarations, 50 statements and Bible verses about who you are in Christ. This is an audio meditation and a written statement that is extremely popular with my clients, and I want to give you access just for sharing your Apple Podcast review. Simply screenshot your review and send it to hello@vibrantchristianliving.com, and we'll send you the link to access the 50 I Am Declarations resource. Thanks so much for sharing your rating and review so that we can get the word out about the podcast. See you back here next week.